Most people think of the whammy bar as one of rock's wildest tools, dive bombs, squeals, and bends that break every rule. But some of the greatest guitarists in history built their entire sound without ever touching one. Today we're diving into 10 legends who proved you don't need a whammy bar to create iconic guitar tones. When it comes to guitarists who never touched a whammy bar, B.B. King stands right at the top. His famous Gibson Lucille never had one. That was no accident. King's entire sound revolved around his left hand, his vibrato, his bends, and the way he could make a single note sing with more soul than most players could in an entire solo. The beauty of BB's playing was its simplicity. He didn't need tremolo arms or tricks to move an audience. Just listen to The Thrill Is Gone. Every sustained note is dripping with emotion, and that came entirely from his fingers. His bending was like a voice crying, pleading, and celebrating, sometimes all in the same phrase. To me, B.B. King is living proof that vibrato can be more powerful than any dive bomb or whammy flutter. Lucille stayed whammy free, and his tone is still unmatched. Now, Mark Knopfler is another master who never leaned on a whammy bar. Instead, he built his career on fingerpicking and the unique tone it gave him. Whether he was playing a Strat, a Tele, or his iconic Les Paul replica, Knopfler kept things whammy-free, letting his right hand do all the talking. Think about the legendary intro to Money for Nothing. It's one of the most recognizable riffs in rock, and it didn't need tremolo dives or flashy tricks. Just Knopfler's subtle touch, plucking the strings with his thumb and fingers, gave it that percussive, almost vocal-like sound. He even explains in interviews that every guitarist develops their own touch and has just never included a pick, surrender, or a whammy. Knopfler's solos, like on Sultans of Swing, prove how expressive bending, phrasing, and timing can be. He didn't need extra hardware. His sound came straight from his hands, and that's why it's timeless. If there's one guitarist who's almost inseparable from the image of a Les Paul with a fixed bridge, it's Slash. From Sweet Child O' Mine to November Rain, his soaring leads and bluesy riffs were built on sustained bends and vibrato, not tremolo tricks. Slash has always been about reliability and tone. A Les Paul with a Tunomatic bridge gave him the stability he needed on stage, especially with Guns N' Roses pushing songs to the edge night after night. He didn't want to worry about springs, tuning shifts, or a floating bridge wobbling under his fingers. Listen closely to his solos. The way he bends into notes, holds them, and lets them cry. That's his version of whammy, bending strings with raw emotion. Slash proves you can get every ounce of drama and expression from your fingers and a rock-solid bridge. No tremolo required. Keith Richards is the definition of a guitarist who never needed a whammy bar. His sound is built on open tunings, steady riffs, and a rock-solid rhythm that powered the Rolling Stones for decades. Whammy dives? They never entered the Stones' DNA. Take Brown Sugar, or Start Me Up. These riffs are unforgettable not because of tricks, but because of Keith's sense of groove and simplicity. He often used open G tuning with 5 strings, creating that signature Stones crunch. A whammy bar would only get in the way of his precision. Keith once joked that his guitar setup was about stability. You don't mess with a good thing. For him, that meant no floating bridges, no whammy hardware, just reliable intonation. His rhythm-first approach shows that rock doesn't need gimmicks. It needs riffs that stick in your head forever. And nobody did that better than Keith Richards. Now, Some players did experiment with tremolos in the early days, but eventually set them aside, choosing stability and hand vibrato instead. Their legacy proves you don't have to lean on a whammy bar to carve out some of the greatest tones in rock history. First one is Eric Clapton. In his early days with the Yardbirds and Cream, Clapton sometimes played strats with tremolos, but by the late 60s, he'd had enough. Clapton famously blocked or disabled his trem systems, relying completely on bends and finger vibrato to shape his sound. That decision shaped his entire career. On Layla and other assorted love songs, for instance, his solos cut through with incredible sustain and vocal-like phrasing. No dive bombs, no trem wobbles, and just pure expression through bending and tone. Clapton has often said he prefers the simplicity and stability of a fixed setup. Less to worry about, less that could go wrong on stage. And honestly, when you listen to Wonderful Tonight or Crossroads, it's hard to imagine a whammy bar making them any more emotional. Clapton proved that sometimes the simplest setup is the most powerful one. Page is another legend who left the whammy bar behind. Early on, he experimented with Bigsby units on some of his guitars, but when Led Zeppelin rose to fame, his iconic sound was all about riffs, tunings, and finger vibrato. Think of Whole Lotta Love or Black Dog. Those massive riffs came from a Les Paul with a fixed bridge, and they didn't need tremolo dips to make jaws drop. Page's creativity came from how he used the guitar itself, bowing the strings, alternate tunings, and pure imagination. Even his solos, like the one in Stairway to Heaven, prove that bending and sustain can deliver every ounce of drama a whammy bar might provide. By keeping his setup simple, Page ensured his tone stayed huge and reliable on stage. In the end, Zeppelin's legacy came from riffs, not hardware. Now here's where things get interesting. Jeff Beck could have been a whammy bar guy, and on rare occasions, he did use one, but his reputation was built on fingers alone. Beck mastered bending, vibrato, and touch in ways most players still can't understand. At Ronnie Scott's in 2007, he mesmerized an audience that included Clapton and Page without leaning on tremolo tricks. His subtle finger vibrato and tone control created sounds that seemed impossible. Beck's genius was proving that you could achieve whammy-like expression with just your hands. He manipulated harmonics, bends, and volume swells to create sounds others needed hardware for. To this day, his approach remains unique. So while you might occasionally spot him with a trim-equipped Strat, Beck never depended on it. His palette was his fingers, and that's why guitarists everywhere talk about the Jeff Beck touch as something no one can replicate. Pink Floyd's David Gilmour did use tremolo subtly in the early years, but his signature sound wasn't about dive bombs or warbles. It was about long singing notes, sustained bends, and expressive vibrato. On Comfortably Numb, one of the most iconic solos ever recorded, there's not a single whammy flourish. It's all phrasing, bends, and tone. Gilmour relied more on pedals, like delay, reverb, and modulation, to expand his soundscape rather than tremolo hardware. Yes, if you dig deep, you'll find early Floyd clips where he touches the bar lightly, but those moments are exceptions, not the rule. His magic came from his fingers, his phrasing, and his ability to make a guitar line feel like a voice in the middle of a psychedelic dream. To me, Gilmour shows that even subtlety can outshine all the hardware in the world. Finally, there are guitarists who did have tremolo systems on their guitars, but almost never leaned on them. Their sound was built elsewhere, through harmony, texture, and creativity. Brian May's Red Special actually has a homemade tremolo system, but here's the thing, he almost never used it. Instead, he focused on layered harmonies, orchestral textures, and a singing lead tone that defined Queen's sound. Songs like Bohemian Rhapsody and We Will Rock You don't need whammy dips. They need precision, harmonies, and sustain, all of which May delivered through his unique build, sixpence coin picking, and clever use of delay. Even when he did use the tremolo, it was subtle, more of a color than a tool. His sound wasn't about flash, it was about creating something symphonic with just one guitar. That choice is why Queen's guitar sound is still instantly recognizable. Brian May proved you don't need a trem-heavy style to be larger than life. Rush's Alex Lifeson rounds out our list. His arsenal often included guitars with tremolo systems, but if you listen closely to Rush's catalog, the whammy bar is rarely a star player. Instead, Lifeson's strength was atmosphere. He built massive soundscapes with arpeggios, textured chords, and effects. Songs like Limelight or Tom Sawyer rely on dynamics and creativity, not dive bombs. Sure, there are moments when he nudges the bar for a shimmer, but his signature was never about tremolo. It was about balancing rhythm, melody, and experimentation in a way that matched Neil Peart's drums and Geddy Lee's bass perfectly. Lifeson shows that you can have a whammy-equipped guitar on stage and still hardly touch it, proving once again that fixed bridge stability and expressive bends win in the long run. So there you have it. 10 legendary guitarists who built their iconic sounds without relying on a whammy bar. Some never touched one, some abandoned them, and others only used them sparingly. Which approach do you prefer? Whammy tricks or rock-solid stability? Let me know in the comments below.